want to show you how we use this tool of what we call welfare analysis, the analysis of producer and consumer surplus, to analyze the effect on efficiency of various possible policy interventions. Let's return our attention to the rent control policy that we've looked at now for several weeks. Came up in Chapter 3, and here we are in Chapter 7 still talking about it, or at least coming back to it. So let's go to our supply and demand framework, and what I've got is a New York City apartment market mapped out. And I'm supposing, of course, in this market that a competitive equilibrium prevails. So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze a rent control policy. And I have a way of keeping tabs of things that's a little different than what Frank does. It's a little bit better, in my opinion. I keep track of consumer surplus, producer surplus, and then the total. Later on, we'll have some government revenue to deal with, and I'll add a row between producer surplus and government revenue. And then I'm going to look at the market outcome. Then I'll look at the price ceiling, and then I'll look at the change. And I'm sorry, I'm sort of crammed up against the edge of my screen here. Then I'll tabulate results in a way that hopefully will come to make sense to you. It gets sort of messy if you try to shade areas and then compare different policies, but my way keeps things nice and neat. All right, let's change colors. You'll find, I think, that using multiple colors helps keep things clear, and you get to be the cool one with a lot of different colored pens in your pocket protector. That's what you can aspire to. All right, so let's analyze the price ceiling. We know how to do this. There's a price ceiling, I'll call it P sub C, that's set below the market equilibrium. If it's above the market equilibrium, it has no effect. We know the quantity demanded goes up to Q1, but the quantity supplied is only Q2. And that's all the apartments that are rented as Q2. Now, here's where we do the welfare analysis. This is all old stuff, but now let's do the new stuff. We're going to make an assumption that is going to be necessary to graph this. We're going to assume people willing to pay most get the apartments. Now that's not necessarily the case, and in fact this analysis, because of that assumption, is going to actually understate the efficiency cost of this policy, but it's necessary to get this analysis into the graphical space. So here's how we do it. At Q2, notice that the last person that rented an apartment under our assumption was willing to pay this very high amount. Do I need to no, I guess I don't need to indicate that. This line. I guess I can. It doesn't hurt to draw too many lines. We'll just say that willingness to pay of the last person to get an apartment was P1. So what I do to make things easy, I'm going to label everything. Label all areas that are framed off A, B, C, D, E, F. If you label some of these areas in here by mistake, no big deal. I just have done this kind of analysis enough to know that I don't need those. Okay, now instead of shading areas, producer and consumer surplus, I'm just going to keep track of these lettered areas. So remember that under the market outcome, the consumer surplus was the area below the demand curve above the price line. That's area A, B, C. So I'll just write that. I'll use black for the consumer surplus, so for the market case. And then same idea for producer surplus in the market case. The producer surplus was the area below the price line above the marginal cost. We get area D, E, F. The total surplus is A, B, C, D, E, F. All right, well now along comes this policy, a rent control policy. And notice what happens. Consumers get the area below the demand curve only from 0 to Q2, which is the only apartments rented. But we assume that there are no side payments or anything, so the people that get apartments only have to pay P sub C. So we get area A, B, D goes to consumers now. And of course producers just get area F. And when we look at the total, A, B, D, F, there we have it. And we can look at the original surplus and the new surplus, and we can conclude, I'll use red for my change, we can conclude that I need a red pen. We can conclude that the total surplus has fallen by area CE. And notice that's this area here. That's surplus we used to get that we don't anymore. We call that deadweight loss, actually, the reduction in surplus from the optimum to whatever less efficient outcome we have. The difference in surplus is called the deadweight loss. And if we're dealing with an efficiency reducing policy, such as price ceiling, the deadweight loss is always going to pop up in this lower right corner. All right, well, what happens? What else happens? Notice that let's start with consumers. Consumers have a somewhat ambiguous effect. On the one hand, they've lost area C, that used to be consumer surplus, but they gain area D. So the effect on consumers, like we say, some lose, some win. That was our conclusion before. Now we've quantified it a bit. The ones who get apartments get them cheaper, and there's some welfare in that. And then finally, the producers are just unambiguously worse off. Negative DE is their change in surplus. And notice that the difference in the total, we can always get there by taking the sum of the changes to the individual agents. So notice that positive D, negative E, so positive D, negative D cancel out, and we're left with negative C plus negative E, negative CE. So that's how we do it, and in the real world, we actually put dollar estimates, and we can quantify how much these inefficient policies actually cost the society in terms of lost social well-being.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.